All right, greetings and salutations to everybody out there in YouTube land. I'm your host once again, Dan Thornton. I want to thank you all for tuning in today for Lions Talk Live. Hopefully, you're new to the channel, and if you do enjoy the content, you'll consider subscribing. So, if you could help us on our path to Sunday, by Sunday, I should say, trying to reach 4,700. And let me turn down the volume here. There we go, so it's not feeding back to you guys. But anyways, yeah, if you could do your part to help us reach 4,700 by kickoff on Sunday, that sure would be appreciated. Also, if you're watching and you've got nothing else to do, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, that like button, and let's help out the channel. All right, I see the comment section is already moving and shaking. So if you guys can, let me scroll to the top and try to catch up to you guys, hopefully not fall too far behind today. All right, Bergs, what do we got? Good morning, Lions faithful and coach. Definitely a must-win game, in my opinion. Gamble will have them ready. Yeah, I think, yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, if you want to stay relevant in the playoff picture, if you want to maintain a comfortable lead in the NFC North, over the Vikings, who, they have lost a couple now. I'd say, yeah, you got to come in here and say, nay, this is a business trip. You got to have all hands on deck. You got to have everybody ready and focused. You've got to come down here and say, hey, we've got a 5-6 New Orleans team that just got hammered by the running game last week. And that's an ideal setup for Detroit, as long as we can impose our will in that regards on them, just like obviously Atlanta did a week ago. All right, so we got Tess. Greetings and salutations. Greetings and salutations. Can't overlook the Saints. They trying for first place as well. Yeah, and they're trying to win their division. They're trying to get into the playoffs. They're trying to keep improving. And this time of year, the other part, I know we've talked about in recent weeks, especially before the Chicago game, you're going to have more and more people trying to play for contracts, whether you're talking coaches or players. They've got a reason to go out there. They're not just going to lay down, and they may even play harder now than they did in the middle of the season or the start of the year, just because they know, they've got to fight for their lives, their jobs. They've got to make sure that there's a reason for Team A to keep them. And if Team A doesn't keep them, then they've got to say, hey, I've got enough good film that my agent can secure me employment elsewhere next year. So a lot to play for. John, what he got correct. They're in second place, but just got ran over by Atlanta. Lions need to pound the ball on them. Yeah. And it will be an ideal setup as far as if we can run the ball legitimately, just trying to help right the ship. I get Goff has not played his best football the last 2 weeks. I mean, I think we all get that. And you're going to have to do everything you can to try to help reestablish his confidence in the pass protection and in the schemes, then try to get himself righted. So, yes, good point there that we've got to go after him on the ground. All right, Michael, howdy, Dan and Lions faithful. Everyone has some blue cool. Everyone had some blue Kool-Aid. Man, I can't talk today. We are going to win our division and be the team to fear in the playoffs. Michael, to your point, there's a lot of things about the Lions I think other teams would not want to play against in an ideal setup. They're not going to say, hey, let's go with Detroit. That's the best team out there for us. Detroit, we can impose the running game on a lot of people. We do have a lot of weapons offensively. Defensively, I think that's going to be the one real question for this team. And I don't think I'm giving a spoiler alert here by saying that. And it's going to come down to the pass rush. Maybe Aaron Glenn has been holding back some stuff. Maybe some players that we don't know about are about ready to take off. Whatever it may be, that's going to be the focus when we get into the playoffs is, hey, can we get to the other team's quarterback and put enough pressure on them to where it matters? But yeah, this is not probably a team I'm going to guess most people are going to want to face in the first round or maybe even the second round. So we'll see how that shakes out. But I'm liking our chances more and more, especially when I did a little bit of a dive into this particular game. All right, Garland. So can we say Martin and most of the drafted defensive linemen have been a bust by Holmes? Why is he missing on them so much and not other areas of the team? Garland, that's actually a pretty good question. But to your point, now that you got me thinking about it, the defensive line has not really produced at nearly the success rate of his draft picks at virtually every other position. The reasons why, and I mean, there's a couple of things in play. I'm guessing, one, Levi Onwuzurike, I think he would have been something if the back wasn't a problem. But that's also part of the issue, is we all know Holmes likes to or has a tendency to take chances on injured players, hoping to get obviously great return on that investment. In his tenure in Detroit, though, whether it be free agency or through the draft, he really hasn't hit on too many of those injured players. So it's actually been more of a detriment to the team than a positive. Broderick Martin, I'm not going to say he's going to be a bust yet, just because I think, you're going to have to give him another year or so. But I do think at least the physical skills, the athletic skills are there. And I've been saying this in recent weeks to everybody more and more. To me, the problem with the Lions defense, at least the defensive line, is just a flat out lack of athleticism. There's just no athletes out there. You watch Minnesota, the Bears, a lot of other teams. There's some guys who can get around a corner and get to the quarterback. They may not be as stout in the run game or gap responsibility as Detroit, but I'm going to say this. They can put some heat on the quarterback, and that is something the Lions clearly are going to have to address in the upcoming offseason, if not sooner. But the reasons why, Garland, is I just think they're going to have to revisit some of their scouting practices and maybe personnel that they have scouting in those particular areas. Mile Marker, good morning, people. Good morning to you, too. Hopefully you're having a good one. Don, what do we got? Good morning, Duke crew. I'm liking our chances to bounce back this game. Morning, Coach. Morning to you, too. And, yeah, I think this is a pretty good setup for us. Now, New Orleans does have a good defense, except in the defense of the run. They are struggling to shut down the run. One thing that may aid New Orleans, though, is if Jonah Jackson can't go. There is a bit of a drop-off from him to, Scoresdale or anybody else out there. So hopefully Jonah Jackson can go, but I'm going to guess that he's probably out this week as well. Maybe Anzalone too. I wouldn't be surprised if he misses it. And I'm sure he wants to play this game since this is the team who drafted him, X amount of years ago. All right, Don, what do you got? Greetings and salutations, all. Jonah Jackson needs to stay, but I'm thinking Frank might be gone after this year. Thoughts? There could be more and more validity to that because there's a clear difference between Jonah Jackson and anybody else. And I just said that. With Frank Ragnow, I get he's still playing at a high level, but you are starting to see some chinks in his physical armor. Some of the things you're used to seeing him do out there and some of the wins you're used to seeing him do, he can't do quite as consistently. I was really surprised watching against Green Bay how many times he got blown up at the line of scrimmage. And that's not something you expect out of somebody of his caliber. Normally, you give him one-on-one blocking, he's going to win, 95, 99% of those opportunities. But there were some times you could see when on the replays and the coaching film and everything, he got beat one-on-one. He got pancaked one-on-one. And then there were a few other times where they actually had to pull a guard over to help him. And that's just not his norm. But what will happen this offseason? Can you replace somebody? Because let's also be fair to Frank Ragnow. He's still playing at a very good high level. Is he playing at the same elite level he has, say, the last 2 to 3 years? Currently, no. Doesn't mean he can't recapture it, but at least the last few games, he hasn't been quite himself. So I guess I could just say that. Bruce, what do you got, man? Excuse me. Holmes just isn't going to sign anyone for help on the defensive side of the ball, is he? Doesn't look like it. I was talking to I think Bergs a day or so ago about it, about the Peters and some of the other free agents out there, and other teams are snatching them up. We're not, and I guess that's just a clear sign that either the Lions don't want to open up the books and pay these guys, or they just don't see them as upgrades or in any way, shape, or form helpful versus some of the players they currently have. So it is what it is. Little John, what do you got? Good morning, Dollar. Boy, this is a topic. Dollar General Brad ain't feeling that life. No, it doesn't appear that he's going to go out on a shopping spree heading into the holidays to try to help the Lions. And that's, you guys have heard me talk about it for a while. That's really kind of disappointing to me because I think we can all agree this team is on the cusp of being, one of the top 2 to 3 seeds in the NFC. And I do think our chances to win the third seed are, I won't say it's locked, but it looks pretty dang good. And then you look into the postseason then. If you could have got the number 2 seed, let's just say, that's going to be the worst team entering the playoffs. And I get when you look at the probable teams that we're going to face, it's somebody we've already played, whether it's going to be the Packers, the Seahawks, the Vikings, whoever it's going to be will have played the vast majority of the teams that are more than likely going to be that bottom seed or even the next seed after that. And the one problem I think we have over all those teams, like I just mentioned a little bit ago, is the pass rush. I get they've moved Jack Campbell out there. I get they put Barnes out there. I mean, they probably would put your mama out there if she didn't cost too much and they could sign her up and put her out there. It's just they're desperate for pass rush, and the fact that they haven't addressed this in any way, shape, or form, I think is a little telling to me. I guess a little surprising. So it's not as I'm way more aggressive than that, and I'm surprised they've been so passive in that regard. Robert, greetings to you too. Drone, what do you got? Morning, coach. We as Lions fans been waiting so long for success. If they lose a game, feels like the end of the world. Sometimes emotions are high. Yeah, I would 100% agree with you, Jerome. Without question. You see how the fan base for the Lions, responds to any kind of loss, any kind of adversity like that. And yeah, you're not wrong. It's doom and gloom. It's, end of the world type stuff. It's, people are about ready to jump off the plane at 25,000 feet or whatever. But with that being said, I also think when you give it a day or so, take a deep breath. I think everybody kind of rights the ship a little bit and says, man, hey, we're 8-3. We should be pretty happy with that. I mean, it doesn't mean we couldn't say, hey, man, only if we would have won that Seattle game and then obviously the Packers game. But realistically speaking, most teams don't go 8-3. Most, even less teams go, 10-1. So to your point, man, take it with a grain of salt. All right, Archie, what do you got? Morning. Sorry I haven't chatted in a while. Well, hopefully you're having a good one, man. I'm glad you're back. So hopefully you're enjoying the show and having a good day, man. Coach, Eddie, coach, is Hutch hurt? I do believe he's, in my opinion, he's hurt and he's worn down, and probably more that than anything else. He's just fatigued from the amount of reps he's taking this year. But they've got to have him out there, otherwise they have zero pass rush. Could we get ultimately more out of Hutch? Sure, but I do think in the coming years, they're going to have to find a better rotation instead of asking him to play 98% of all defensive snaps. I mean, it's just crazy. It's unheard of, and it's unhealthy from a player. It'd be one thing if you're a cornerback. It'd be one thing if you're a punter, kicker, maybe even you could say wide receiver or whatever. Just the amount of wear they're going to put on that body, especially someone on the D line. That's unhealthy. And you guys have heard me in the past say I kind of more and more as I've gotten older, I'd say it wouldn't be a bad idea to rotate offensive linemen from time to time. Maybe like what the New England did a couple years ago, where every series they would rotate one offensive lineman out. And the idea is just to take some of that wear off them throughout the course of the season. And that does have a cumulative effect. I think if they could just rotate Hutch and get him down to like 75% of the snaps, which is still a pretty good workload in the NFL level, you would help preserve him and make him more productive when he's out there. Robert, time to dominate. Yes, when they go into this game, I make no bones about it. I think the Lions need to come out, and not for any other purpose than their own well-being mentally. They need to come out and dominate. They need to come out and win by 50, 90, whatever, 20. Just, make it so everybody in the NFL says, yeah, the Lions just had a bad streak or whatever. Or maybe the Packers had a good game plan, same with the Bears. But with that also being said, don't be foolish in thinking that the New Orleans Saints aren't going to try to do the exact same stuff the Bears and the Packers did, and the Chargers. They're all going to mimic it until Detroit proves they can beat these schemes. All right, Derwin, good morning to you, and greetings, due family. This is a big game for us. We need to step up and finish them in the first half. I like the way you're thinking. Let them know what the difference is between the playoffs teams and rebuilding no games. Yeah, I agree with you. Come out there and just dominate them from the opening snap. I mean, we've all talked about it. I would love for Ben Johnson to come out and be uber aggressive, take some deep shots. You guys heard me talk in the past about my issues with playing so much single high safety for Detroit. Not that other teams don't do it, but if you go back and watch the replay of the Packers game, to me, even though it stunk watching it, the Packers knew exactly what to do and what they were going to get out of the defense on that very first play. They send two guys deep down the sidelines, streak patterns, whatever you want to call it, and they force. And this is the one thing I didn't get watching the replay. The very first play of the game, they've got Kirby Joseph up basically playing a blitzing safety. So they've got him over the tight end. He's going to blitz in, and it's just not Kirby's strength. He's not physically strong enough to beat most tight ends in the NFL. Now, who's the safety who's good at that? And that's Tracy Walker. And you know what? They've got him in single high safety, and Tracy Walker is not good in coverage. He's good against the run. He's good at blitzing. He's good at hitting. He's not the dude you want out there with the game on the line. So anyways, irregardless, the Packers sent two dudes down the opposite sides of the field. You know what? Walker was a dead man walking. He couldn't cover that kind of ground. He's not that fast anyways. And what happens? We get up whatever it was, 50-some yarder. So Packers knew what they were going to get. They had the right play call, and Detroit was caught, with their pants down basically. I'm hoping this game Sunday, we do that to New Orleans. Just say, hey, we're going to take some deep shots early and often because this is going to loosen up the coverage, and we've got the personnel to have some success. If we do that, and then Aaron Glenn comes out and maybe does some more blitzing with correct personnel and stuff, I think that's good for us because we need to start imposing our will on the other teams. And I'm hoping we do that, Derwin. I really do. I love the fact that the team and the coaching staff seemed pissed. I want to see some angry Lions Sunday, no smiling. Yeah, exactly. And I do think to a certain extent they kind of got complacent for a while there. And I get it happens. It's human nature. You won some games. You won some games in dramatic fashion. At some point, maybe you got less energy in you because you're kind of emotionally drained. Hopefully this lit the fire, whatever you want to say, and gets them out there because they go out there and dominate this game, go 9-3, set up a game again in Chicago, or maybe we can get that game. I think we're going to all forget about Thanksgiving and say maybe that was actually a good thing for us. All right, Scott, we got good morning, MCDT and Lions Nation from the Canadian Lions fan. Expecting a bounce back game in a big way, a rested O-line. Biggest question would be, can we finally get to the opposing opponent's quarterback? And I think that's the only thing really missing, in my opinion. I mean, it's not like we're great in certain spots on this team, but we're not bad. But the pass rush or lack thereof, it's horrendous. And on a side note, not anything to do with your question, Scott, there was an ESPN had their young guns or whatever you want to call it stuff out there for NFL players, and I thought, man. I mean, there was some stuff on there for the Detroit Lions for sure, and there's some younger players, but I was surprised that Jack Campbell got onto their young guns list and that Brian Branch did not. So, hey, opinions change, and I get that these are people that maybe don't watch the Lions all the time, but I thought that was a bit of an eyebrow raise. And nothing against Campbell. I think he is progressing, but I would say this, Brian Branch, I was surprised he wasn't on that list. You too, Derwin. Have a good day. All right, morning. All right, morning to you too. That guy. What exactly is Jackson's injury? Is it broken? I don't think it's broken, but I'm guessing it's probably got maybe a small fracture or something like that in it. I mean, if it was a playoff game, I mean, they could probably do some stuff to get him out there and playing. But since it's not, they're probably letting it heal as much as they can. It's been going on for this will be the third week. So he's probably got a week or two left, if I'm correct. And that's just like a small fracture or something in the wrist. But for an offensive lineman, yeah, that would hurt because every time, obviously, you're driving, yeah, that's going to be a lot of pain. But we'll see what happens. I'm thinking he's probably out past the Chicago game and then probably back. All right, Dr. Detroit, good morning, all. Good morning to you too. Matthew, morning, bud. Morning to you too, Matthew. Dr. D, what do we got? We will figure out who they are and where they are headed this week. I would agree with that. This would be a big one because if they should come out and drop this to the Saints, and the Saints can't hurt you. They do have some stuff on both sides of the ball. So if you don't play great, you keep them around, that would be the telling thing. The one thing I would think is going in our favor a little bit versus some of the more recent games is the quarterback play. Like Justin Fields, even though he might not be the guy in the future in Chicago, he does hit a big area of weakness for us. His athleticism versus our defensive line lack of athleticism is not a good mixture. Um, you know, I will say this for Jordan Love, he is getting better, but I also think our game plan for him was not good at the start of the game. Second half, as we all talked about, we did a much better job against him and the Packers. But man, they came out and laid such a horrible egg in that first half. Yeah, that's is what it is, though. It's ancient history now. But yes, I do think, yeah, we need to come out and dominate this game. One Funky, good morning, all. Good morning to you, too. Dr. Troy is in the funk. Funk Doc, all right. Michael, love your show, Dan, and no complaints about the time you spend talking on topics. Thanks for that, Michael. Yeah, sorry about that. I know sometimes I do rant. All right, Matthew, I want my Wisconsin life to stop sucking. We must win. I can't stand seeing these cheddar heads happy. Well, I got some good news for you, Matthew. I think there is a high probability we get, say, the number 2 or 3 seed, and we might face the Packers in the first round of the playoffs. I do think more and more that it is a possibility. And I wouldn't say it's the ideal matchup for Detroit just because you do have a mobile quarterback and you've got an athletic defensive front. And that does seem to be something Detroit more and more has struggled with on both sides of the ball. Milo, did Coach Camo give players off till today? I think they came back, if I'm not mistaken, Monday. So now that also means Tuesday or yesterday, they would have just went through like film studies, stuff like that. Nothing of a physical standpoint. Now, in your point, though, for today, they'll be back on the field today. So if that's what you mean, then yes, they gave them off from physical stuff yesterday. Don Burr, hey, didn't see you yesterday, man. I'm glad you're back. Greetings and salutations, Marcus Peters. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, Don. I would sign him just because it would give you a veteran and one that when his back's right, he's still effective. I really thought they would probably go after the Barrett or whatever, Derek Barrett, that got cut by Philly, but he signed, I don't even remember where he signed, somewhere else. It wasn't Detroit, I know that, because I do think that would be an area of better need for us. But to your point, would I bring him in? Absolutely, because you're one DB injury away from being pretty shallow in that secondary, in my opinion. All right, just when I got DL might just be hard to draft. It is. There are some spots that are gonna be harder, like quarterback is. It just stinks, and I know I'm probably lighting a fire here when I say this. I know Dr. Detroit would have been okay with us getting Jalen Carter, and hindsight's always 2020. They obviously felt that some of the other guys would pan out a little bit better than they did this year. That isn't the case. But the other part of it is, hey, you got Gibbs. Gibbs doesn't appear to be a bust by any means. Who knows how the rest of the draft would have went. I do think if we get Gibbs, probably high probability you don't get Laporta. It would have changed everybody else's draft structure. Campbell, while I get he hasn't had a stellar rookie year, I also don't think it's been horrible. So I'm okay with the guys they've drafted this year. Last year, though, or some of the other defensive linemen, you got to get some production in there. And I think you got to start getting more athletic players out there because we do have more and more mobile quarterbacks in the league, let alone our own division. And you've got to be able to get some heat on them. You can see what Minnesota can do to Justin Fields. You can see what we can't do to Justin Fields. You can see some of the problems Dobbs has when he faces pressure. You can see that there's a strong chance when we face him, if he's still the starting quarterback, he's going to give us some problems because of that as well. And I can go on and break it down by team, but I think you guys get the point. All right, Don, what do you got? I'm looking at teams whose D-line or overall defense has less or similar talent but are producing. Aaron Glenn is starting to seem like the problem. Oh boy, we're gonna open up a can of worms on this one. I would agree with you, Don. I think schematically, you guys heard me talk about earlier in the year, in the middle of the year, the cone formation, the funnel formation, and everything. And then for a while, okay, I get it, but I also get, man, you're not putting any pass rush on the opposing quarterback. You've got to start doing something to displace and rattle, upset timings, whatever it is. You got to get after them. because if you just give them all day, any quarterback in this league, even the miraculous one, Tim Boyle, is going to complete some passes if they're at peace back there. So yeah, between that and maybe getting more input from, say, like your defensive line coach or some of your sub coaches on, some ideas, that might not be a bad idea. Mr. Ed, good morning, Coach. What is the one thing you would do different on offense to attack Saints defense? That'd be easy. Every play, at least in the first series or two, there's going to be one or two vertical routes going on against them. And, not that I want Jameson Williams to only be a deep shot guy, but let's also be real. There's very few people on this planet that can keep up with him. So that's going to take two players from the Saints towards him. If they're going to leave him one-on-one, then great. You should get some deep shots and completions. If they are going to take two players away and assuming they're rushing for, that's six. That means there's only five people left to guard everybody else. It means you probably got man coverage across the board. St. Brown should roast that. Laporta should have a good day against it. Gibbs or whoever the running back is coming out of the backfield should have a good day. And on the other side of the field, I'm probably having, Reynolds or maybe Khalif Raymond also do a vertical route against it. Because if you're getting two people on the other side and you got everybody in man, that means that other person, if they are going to double JMO, he's probably also is accounting for in single coverage, so man-to-man coverage. And you've got to start pulling some of these teams out of the compressed zones that they're playing, because otherwise you're going to see Goff continue to struggle. You're going to see Goff and this offense struggle, especially early in the game. When has Goff been effective the last two games and the offense? It's been in the 2-minute drill. And when you're spreading people out, you are using more deep route concepts because time is of the essence in those moments or situations. So you want my thoughts, Ed? There you go. I'm going to make you guard the whole field. All right, mile marker coach. What about on Eisen show? Blandino said one, refs under more scrutiny because of betting. Two, fans' anger over calls will only get a glacial reaction. NFL is doing great, Cash. So here's what I'd say. I think I actually saw most of that mile marker. And I would say this. I think part of the problem with the NFL is just the amount of replays on every play. And I think this is kind of what Blandino was talking about, is that every play gets so reviewed and, microscoped in. And let's zoom in 3,000% to see if the fingernail is on the sideline or not. How could you not see that live when, you got to use like the whatever the space station's telescope to be able to zoom in and see that thing. And I think that's part of it. I think if we got away from replay, not that I want it gone, but I think if we got away from it so much, it would probably make everybody feel better about the officiating. I've done some officiating, not at that level, but I can tell you there's a whole lot less complaints most of the time because people can't look up the Jumbotron and say, well, let's get the third angle, the fourth angle. Let's spend another 5 minutes during a commercial break looking at this and debating it. You're going to anger people because of it. Because let me tell you, refereeing's not an easy job. And the people that do it, I'm going to guess the vast majority of them take it serious and do the best that they can. But you're talking about two people's, you're talking about a couple people's eyes. That particular part of the field, you maybe have one or two sets of eyes that can see it. And they get to see it live. They don't get replays. They don't get different angles. They don't get to zoom in or anything. And you're trying to watch an area of the field. It's mean you're going to catch everything, but they do catch most things. As far as, the betting part, man, let's be honest. My dad was born in the 1920s, and I can remember even as a kid, him betting then. Had a book and everything and a guy, that he'd call or whatever. So betting's been around forever. It's legal and they're up front about it now, where, in the 1950s or 60s or whatever, it was more in the back of some place that you did it. So who knows, man. All right, Don, what do you got? We are so quick to call a player a bust nowadays. Yeah. And it's just part of the culture, who we are all now. We can get food delivered to us. We can get this or that in a phone call, or remember since Thanksgiving just passed last week. Remember Black Friday? Man, like 10, 15 years ago, people would be getting up at whatever time to go out and wait in a 3-hour line to get some $50 deal off. Nobody does that anymore because of Amazon. They just go on, click it, get it, see it tomorrow. So I know I did that with the green screens. I didn't go out to the store. So it's part of who we are, Don. And I'm assuming you're talking about Broderick Martin or maybe Campbell. I think both of them are going to be fine, but not everybody's, to your point, not everybody's a star the moment they get on the field. All right, Detroit D, go Lions. Good morning to you too. Hope you're having a good one, D. All right, Phil. Hey, how you doing, Philly? Good morning. Good morning to you too. Dr. Detroit, good morning, One Pride. Good morning. Dr. Detroit. Don, some players are busts, especially how they need to be used. I would say sometimes, coaches do try to fit the circle into the square or whatever you want to say. And I think there's probably some truth to that, Dr. Detroit. And Dominic, good morning from Texas. Let's go Lions. Good morning to you. Hopefully you're having a good one, and hopefully it's a little bit warmer there where you are than where it is here, what it is here. Alec, have they called Watts camp back, man? If they haven't, they should. And you know what? They should probably send a case of dew or two over to him because, I get he's older. I get he's beat up, but I do think he's better than probably the majority of what we have on the team right now. So I would maybe even say this, maybe get some guys over there and just say your option to not sign with Detroit. We don't understand that. We're not going to allow that. You're going to sign here. Send Tony and Vinny over there and let's have a conversation. All right, Justin, good morning, Texas. Love that you are a Lions fan. Yeah. And, one thing I've been surprised from doing the show for a while now, it's just the Lions fans everywhere. We haven't seen Wilson in a minute, but he's in Hawaii, and maybe it's because the time changes and stuff now. He maybe can't get on the show as much as he used to. But we've had people from the Philippines, we've had people from China, UK, stuff like that. So it's been impressive seeing. I would have never guessed this, Jazz, back in the day starting this thing up. But it goes to show you, man. Lions fans are everywhere, and I guess that's probably true with most franchises. But just I would have never guessed it offhand. All right, Boo Booth. Good morning, Duke crew. The Lions are not in Super Bowl or bust mode this year. Put it in perspective. Yeah, and I would say from Brad Holmes' perspective, there's a lot of truth to that. He's clearly got a plan, and it doesn't matter what I say, what you say, or anybody else says. He's sticking to that plan, and his plan is to build this team through the draft. Sign some free agents, targeted, calculated moves. And there's nothing wrong with it. If it all works, hey, great. It's just, obviously we have different opinions and needs and desires, I guess, for the team. I think we have an opportunity this year to do something, but I also get his and respect his opinion that, hey, we're going to do it this particular way, and this is where I think we're going to go. Because overall, we can all probably agree this. During Holmes' tenure, the Lions have only gone up. So we should all also probably keep that in mind as well. Scott, I was having a football conversation with a friend of mine the other day who is an Eagles fan. He commented that the one team he'd be nervous about playing is the Lions. Liked hearing that. I wonder why he said that, Scott. The only thing I can say is if I'm on the other team and I'm looking over, Detroit's offense scares me because they can put up points. They do have some matchup problems everywhere, whether it be the running backs, the tight ends, and they've got a group of receivers that can cause most defenses problems. So I get that part, especially if you watch part of the Bills game against the Eagles. I get, okay, Josh Allen is going to do things that cause problems to defenses that Jared Goff cannot physically do. I get that part. But you also watch the progression of some of their plays through the Eagles defense as far as the players, tight ends, receivers, etc. The Eagles had some problems with that. Now, how much of that you want to say is because they had to also consider Josh Allen's mobility? You could look at that too, but I thought they did struggle in coverages against some of their players. I do think the Lions probably have ultimately better skilled position players than the Bills. So I guess with that being said, Scott, to your guys' point, yeah, there could be some validity to that. Sorry. All right, Michael. Lions' current available salary cap is only around $3 million, according to Eric Schlitt pod, due to the season injured players. Yeah, this season's injured players. Yeah, there's some things they could probably do if they wanted to free up some more cap space. But probably your point, Michael, if you restructure some contracts, you're kicking cans down the road, and they probably at the end of this season just want to be able to move on from some of the players that they're paying pretty good amounts to that really aren't producing anything. So that could be why. Uh, Probably why, actually. All right, Jennifer, what do you got? Good morning, Coach, and One Pride. Good morning to you too. Good to see you out there. Let's see, Matthew, alone in Wisconsin, only Detroit fan here. Help! All I'm hearing is how is here now is how the Pack are gonna be in the playoffs because they beat us when a week ago the freaking sky was falling. Yeah, that's most fan bases, man. But I will say this: I think the Packers are getting right, and I do think they have a real good chance at making the playoffs. If we were talking about the bottom seed, I think they do play Minnesota one more time, and that's going to be a big game for both teams. So Minnesota, obviously they got 2 against us. I believe they have 1 more against Green Bay. Excuse me, against Green Bay. And there's a real chance that they don't make it. Where I guess a week or so ago, we were also worried, man, could they catch us in the playoffs and take us over for the NFC North? I think more and more, if I was betting, which I'm not, I do think the Packers will knock Minnesota out of the playoffs. All right, brand new Detroit. Just being real, I've never seen anything you report come to fruition. Watt, Sweat, the trade that this trade, that trade. It's like clickbait commentary at this point. Well, Brand, let's take a step back. When I reported about the Washington trade, I didn't say, hey, Detroit Lions are going to make a trade. I said they were in talks with them. Now, also remember, that's a week or two, I think, maybe 2 weeks before their trades went down. I reported that they were in conversations for a 3rd-round pick and some other stuff like a 5th and 7th. What did they get for Young? They got a 3rd-round pick. What did they get for Sweat? A 2nd-round pick. Now, I'm guessing the 2nd-round pick, because since the trade happened at the trade deadline, means we probably had some other people trying to get Sweat, say like Detroit. So Chicago had to supersede those. And what happens in a bidding war? Prices go up. They don't go down, man. So if that doesn't seem like it's good to you, then I don't know what to tell you. Now, Jameson Williams, I also got on the air and reported it like 3 or 4 hours before it happened that he would be returned to the Detroit Lions. I gave that information to you guys, Micro Mike, Lions Nation United, whatever. And that's roughly 3 or 4 hours before even ESPN had it. So again, I mean, I guess you're being selective. Last year at the draft, I reported before the first pick was happened, the Detroit Lions were more than likely going to be trading out of the number 6 pick. A year ago with TJ Hockenson, I reported a week or maybe 10 days, something like that, before that he was going to be traded. And guess what happened? TJ Hockenson is no longer a Lion. In regards to Watt, I said they were in talks. I didn't say they were going to sign him. I didn't say they were going to buy him a house in Italy or something like that if he came here. I said they had talked. So it could be you got to pay a little bit more attention to the details because, if you're thinking that I said the Lions are going to sign Watt, then you're misrepresenting what I did say. If you said that Sweat is going to be a Lion, then you're also not paying attention. So the Lions and the Commanders are in conversations. Here is the proposed trade value that they're negotiating. And what do you know? Those trade values did hold up. So it sounds like you maybe just need to take a moment of pause and revisit what I said, not insert words into my mouth. So just some foods for thought. All right, Jack, what do you got, G? I think it's time to be strict on Jack Campbell's playing time. He's lost some pass coverage. He's going through a lot of rookie pains for sure, and they're asking a lot more of him as far as doing multiple different things than what he's done in the past, what he's experienced with. So he's doing some definite growing pains this year. But I will say this, I do think he's getting better. Excuse me. Kevin, I watched the Barry Sanders documentary last night. Don't understand why Scott Mitchell went off on a rant. Never mentioned his name once. Yeah, I mean, I think he was just kind of hurt that Wayne Fonte said, hey, we tried to get you a quarterback. We tried to get you Montana and Moon. And let's be real. Scott Mitchell, he did have a good year. He had a couple, average years after that. He's just not in the same league, and it shouldn't be an insult to him. He's just not in the same breath as a Montana or a Warren Moon. I mean, those are Hall of Fame players. And Montana one could argue is one of the greater quarterbacks of all time, if not the greatest. I'm not saying he is the greatest or top five or anything. I'm just saying one could argue that. So, just everybody's got their own takes on it. I'm going to say it's probably more of an indication that Scott Mitchell, like I've talked about before on the show, he clearly had some emotional struggles here in Detroit, and it got to him, and it got to him bad. And I don't wish that on anybody. He felt the weight of the franchise and the playoff demises that during his time here, and obviously that's still sticking with him today. So I feel bad for him because it's obviously something that's not going away anytime soon from him because it's been 20 plus years and he's still that emotional about it. All right, brand new Detroit. Matthew, they play KC next back to reality this week. Could be, yeah. And I do think that I do think the Packers are figuring some things out and Love is improving. Like I said, I do think they have a real good chance to knock Minnesota out of the playoffs and maybe elevate themselves in. But we'll see over the next month, right? Man, thank God. Yeah. Try to get you a little bit more sleep, man. Justin, what do you got? Kevin, I think that's why he was pissed he didn't get any screen time. Maybe, man. Maybe he wanted to be a part of the documentary. Alec, good morning, Coach. Good morning to you, too. Good morning, Coach. Did Holmes give Wattscamp any more calls? Come on, man. Nothing more that I've heard other than whatever. It's been a few weeks now. If they have had some talks, I haven't heard anything else about it. But again, let me reiterate, I know they talked, in which if you're not used to, any kind of pro sports teams front office. So let's just use Watt and the trade deadline and everything else. Teams make tons of calls. They do inquire about this player. Well, if you were to get rid of this player, what would you want? Or certain players will just say like, Watt, who are in retirement. Hey, if you were going to come out of retirement and play again, what would it take? Would you consider coming on over here? We've got a good situation here. What do you think of, Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn, or whatever? Those are normal things to happen. So when I say they talk, I mean, we all shouldn't be caught off guard like, wow, that's crazy. I mean, I get it. It's part of the job of being a reporter is you report those things, but it's also fairly normal practice. Just for the conversation of Montez Sweat and, Chase Young and everything, the Lions talk to them. I can report that and they have 1,000% accuracy on that. I have zero doubts about it. And I do believe the information's good, but let's also remember a couple weeks before that, they were making calls to other teams. You're always going to call to see if you can get value that you think is great return on your investment, especially for someone who values draft picks as much as Brad Holmes. And I know they called the Steelers about, and I don't remember the guy's name anymore, but a defensive lineman there. They called Tennessee about Simmons. Gosh, I don't remember everybody they called, but they made a lot of different calls to different teams. And if nothing more, you're just keeping relationships open between, GMA and yourself. You're trying to make sure that if there's a need to get a player, you already have an established relationship. You're not just cold calling someone. You're going to call up and talk jokes, talk about, the golf game, whatever it is, and you're going to keep that person in a friendly manner because you're going to go out to some, league meetings and stuff, and you want to be able to hang out and be as friendly with people as possible. You don't want to be the person everybody in the league ostracizes and says, I don't even know that guy. He doesn't talk to me, doesn't return the calls, because then when you're going to work with them over a player and potentially make a trade, it's just going to cost more. So you want to try to stay as friendly as possible. So just thoughts for that. Jennifer, Super Bowl or bust? I agree. Thanks for filling in with that. Brand new Detroit. Alec, yeah, they called Wattscamp in a dream. No, I mean, they've talked. Have they talked in the last week or so? That I don't know. Motown Mitch, I think if he's moved back to cornerback, seems to be much bigger need for the Lions. Whew. I mean, it's good that he does have some covered skills, but I think at this point they've almost like cemented him as a safety. But to be fair, you could say that with C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Brian Branch to a certain degree that they're cornerback / safeties. All right, Shaq, what do you got? Not to beat a dead horse, but I honestly think being in Detroit is too much for Campbell. Not having fun in a big city seems overwhelmed. Could be, but I just think he's a typical rookie. The non-typical rookies obviously do very well right off the bat, but the most of them, it takes a little bit of time to kind of gel and develop. All right, JP, good morning, coach. Good morning to you too. Trey, good morning, Dan. I think this is going to be a tough game, but also define the rest of the season for them, in my opinion. Yeah, good morning, Trey, and hopefully you're having a good one. They need to come out and get this game, and if it's by a point or 20 points or whatever, they just need to get it. I'm just hoping that they come out and establish an aggressive manner on both sides of the ball and get the win, and hopefully have a good lead at halftime. You could be 100% right, man. They could be in another situation where they're down 5 with 2 minutes to go, and Goff and the offense has got to go win the game. I'm hoping that's not the case, because they need to try to get some wins that are more comfortable, I think, and try to reassert their identity. All right, Jerome, what do you got? Hey, Dan, when coaches have a game plan in the beginning and it's not working, do they have a backup? Usually at that point, Jerome, they got to kind of figure it out on the fly, and that's where you see more experienced coaches typically do better in those situations. So I'm going to just use the Packers game as an example. Did Aaron Glenn kind of right the ship as far as the defense and figuring some things out? Yes. Did it have to wait until almost halftime to happen? I think you could also make the argument that's correct. And that's part of the problem is when you're watching Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, sometimes it takes them a couple different series to get things figured out and adjusted. The problem with that is a couple series in the NFL can mean a quarter or a half. And that means you let the other team do what they want for half the game before you try to slow them down. You could say it with the Thanksgiving Day game. You could say it with the Ravens game. I think there's a lot of stubbornness and lack of experience from both coordinators. And, I get Aaron Glenn is kind of like the scapegoat on a lot of things, but I also think we're not being fair to him that he made some good adjustments the second half of that Packers game. It's just, again, he took a while to make it, just like Ben Johnson has taken a while in some games to refigure and reconfigure, I should say, the offense to get them to be more successful. All right, Jesse, what do you got? Top of the morning, all. Top of the morning to you. I'm not trying to mortgage the future of the franchise, but don't you think we could use some of the players getting released with some of these teams, at least work them out? I 100% agree with you. There's a couple of different guys in the last week or so. I would at least run them from workouts. And then I guess as a staff or a front office, you have to say, is this dude better than this dude? Because we know what we're getting out of this guy, and it ain't much, at least if you're talking the defensive front. So that's where I think you're 100% right. I'd be kicking some tires. I'd be trying to get some people in and see where it goes from there. JD, any chance of signing Marcus Peters? I'm surprised we haven't brought him in for a visit, unless it just hasn't been reported that we brought him in. I haven't heard anything, and I would say this: I'd be looking to add some secondary depth. I get that we've pointed out in the comment section already, the Lions do have limited funds, so maybe that's a contributing factor. Maybe they don't want to restructure some contracts because some of these guys that they would probably have to restructure, Brad Holmes is like, nah, we got to get rid of this dude this offseason. I don't want to keep him on the books, even though he's no longer here for a second or third season after his departure. That's the only thing I can think of, JD, but I do think it's probably a good thought that, hey, we might have to bite a bullet this year to have more freedom in the future years. Alec Holmes' biggest miscalculation was not trading for Chase Young. Third-round pick was a steal. Hutch needs help. Yeah, he does need help. And to your point, I probably would have traded too much as the GM, but I would have brought in him or Sweat. I mean, the only thing I would say against Sweat is to beat the Bears. And I've said it before, you would have to give up a first-rounder, and I think that would have been too much. But Chase Young, unless you just really think he's not that dude, a third-round pick, hey, prove it to us the rest of the year, and then we'll reevaluate with a new contract. But, man, Sweat would have made a wee bit of an impact on this team. All right, Lions do or die, 92 vet, morning crew. What do they expect from every other commercial is a betting site? Yeah, I mean, they both sides, let's be honest, the NFL is making money on the betting side, and the NFL is a printing press. I know people used to say Ford's need to sell the Lions. And I was like, man, that ain't ever happening because Ford stock is doing down and the company is doing down. And guess what? The Lions are still bringing in money for them. So they're living a life most of us consider a myth. And, yeah, they're not going to give away free money. Your point, though, Lions, yeah, the NFL and gambling are here to stay, and it's not going anywhere. Alec, Donovan Peoples-Jones has been a disappointment so far. He's been a no-show so far. So, yes, a disappointment. Doesn't mean he can't, do something here. But so far, there really hasn't been any need of him or no return on that investment. Bit Lady, hey, Coach saw the film review of the Lions Packers offense wise. The Packers linebackers clearly had a good game plan in execution. Showing looks like man, and it was zone once it was snapped, and vice versa. Yeah, and you've heard me talk about it. They mix coverage as well, and not just them, but other teams. And that's the one area I probably have the biggest problem with Aaron Glenn is you watch throughout the season. It's not just one game or two games. They do a ton of stuff pre-snap, other teams do, to figure out what the Lions' base coverage is. And once they're now post-snap, it doesn't change. So you get to the line of scrimmage, you put somebody in motion or whatever, you get a pretty good idea if the Lions are man or zone. And then when you snap, there's no aha moment. They got me. I'm throwing into a spot that I thought was wide open, but there's actually coverage there. So now you're causing no hesitation from the quarterback. And that's the biggest problem I really have with it is it's a real predictable setup for them. And you can even say that at this point, the offense is starting to trend in that category too, because our offense is starting to get pretty predictable. So, but to your point, Bit Lady, that's also why you're seeing a lot of that, vice versa, switching back and forth. And that's causing some problems for Goff and the offensive line. Bit Lady, in addition, covering the areas of the boundaries for the backs quite well, and also stepping the routes on the receivers since they picked up on the exact yards the Lions wide receivers routes. These things keep Goff off guard and uncomfortable. In addition to the pass protection, the surprise part is that both Decker and Sewell did not do well. Left guard was poor in handling second-tier blockers. Yeah, and that's why Scorsdale got pulled right before halftime. He was getting beat pretty healthily, I guess you could say. And to your points, yeah. So the Bears started a trend, and they're overloading certain parts of the offensive line and causing miscommunication there, which are now leading to pass pressures on Goff. Aiding to that is the zone coverage that both the Bears and Packers have used now. The Packers stole basically the Bears game plan because it was very successful. So they have identified that in the Lions offense, under pressure and duress, the safety release valves or the quick outs, the pressure beaters or whatever for Goff in this offense are here and here, etc. And because of that, you're seeing so many of the players on both those teams jump those routes because they know exactly what's coming. The problem I have, and I get, okay, you had a short week between the Bears and Packers, so not a whole lot you can do. But come on, man. If you're an offense coordinator, you're in 1 year, 2 year, whatever, this is some nickel and dime stuff where, hey, I know they're overplaying this. I've got to try to relieve that by taking some shots here and there. Even if you miss on some of them, you've got to pull that coverage off them. And to your point, Bit Lady, since I see your next comment, you got to make some adjustments. Yeah, they do. And that's, again, the lack of experience from both offensive and defensive coordinator. And over time, will they get that right? Sure. But you're having to watch people learn on the job. Did they activate Irvin? Not to my knowledge, but I wouldn't anticipate that they really would do anything or announce that until probably game day. Or, well, I guess since it's a away game, you'd be able to see if he's traveling with the team on Friday, then he's probably going to be active. So keep that in mind. All right, Jay, what do you got? Yeah, it's sad that he said it's clickbait. Yeah, it's still listening. Keep doing your thing, bro. Don't worry about the haters. Most of us know how the business works. Yeah, and I think you're 100% right, Jay, that most people probably get it. But obviously some people get emotional about it, and it is what it is. I don't have a problem with it at all. That's the beauty of having been a reporter and a coach for over all these years. It's just, you get it. It's just part of things. So don't worry about it. People want to express themselves, go ahead and do it. Don't bother me. David, what do you got? Greetings to you too. Lions, our team is young and built for the future. There are going to be bumps along the way. Just calm down and have faith that Brad and Dan got this one pride. Yeah, I agree. It's a long-term plan, and they are producing probably faster than anybody really anticipated. I mean, last year's turnaround was just really something. This year, I think the one thing, Lions, is that we all just want to see. We just want to see the fairy tale ending. Lions win a Super Bowl, have a parade, and all that stuff. We want to see them obviously go in the playoffs and do something, not just be a one game in and out. I think there's some greed going on, but also just having been Lions fans for a long period of time, you're probably always ready for somebody to rip that football away last second. That's a Charlie Brown reference, by the way. Bit lady, maybe Chase Young didn't want to come to Detroit and wanted to go to San Fran. Rarely do we know the details of the trades not made, mainly the ones we made, unless it's leaked years later. Yeah, and you're 100% right with that. That all the full details of over this trade, that trade, won't come out until sometime later. I get tidbits here and there, and I put it out. But people also have to try to remember, just because they talk doesn't mean there's going to be a trade. So, all right, Nick, what do you got? People need to opt out of listening to the show if that's how they feel. Love the show, man. Keep it up. Thanks for that, Nick. Thanks very much, man. Mile marker. Hey, folks, maybe if you haven't already, think about clicking like and also share and then copy. You don't even have to send it, but it still counts good for the channel. Appreciate that. Yeah, anything you guys can do. Like I said, trying to get to 4,700. If you guys can help do that, that would be great. I would appreciate it big time. Zach, if Lions go 3-3 and split with the Vikings, they win the division. That I would also say is accurate. Yeah, if they can especially win, I'll put this, Zach, this way, Zach. If they win the next 2 games and then win the first game against Minnesota, it's over. They've got it, because the Minnesota at that point would have needed to win both the games against Detroit to have the tiebreaker advantage. So, yeah, I agree. Zach, big opportunity lost on Thanksgiving, though. Could have basically wrapped up the division. Agreed. But, hey, you know what? Lions go out and win this week, and the Vikings should lose this week. They'd be about the same spot. All right, last one, and then I'm going to head on out for due 30 and get ready for work. It doesn't matter where Chase Young wanted to go. He doesn't have a no-trade clause. He's going to wherever the Commanders send him. That is true, but it is possible for teams to have been allowed to talk to him, and if him or his representation want to come out and say, hey, you trade for him, great, but he's not re-signing, they may have just backed off. I don't know, man. Zach, Vikings can only win 11 games if they win every game the rest of the season. This is also true. All right, guys, it's been about an hour, so I'm going to head on out. I hope you all have a great one. If you haven't yet subscribed to Lions Talk Live, please consider doing so. Hope you all have a great day. If there is some breaking news later today, of course, I'll get on the air to you guys as quick as possible. Otherwise, I'll see you all on the next Lions Talk Live. Derwin, hey, good morning to you too. Have Thanksgiving. Yeah. Have a good one. I'll see you all next time. Take care.